Hello, SCIEX Today audience, and welcome to the first of a series of panel debates featuring women in CX tech from the Women in CX Inner Circle. I'll be your host, Claire Musket, and I'm the very proud founder of Women in CX, the world's first online membership community for women in customer experience. Before I introduce my esteemed guests, please allow me to introduce you to today's topic for debate, and that is the future of CX, diversity, equity, and inclusion in technology. Here's the overview. Customer experience as a discipline is evolving in line with technology, and some might say we're heading off track. In an industry obsessed with phrases like omni-channel digital transformation, at the sharp end, where the rubber meets the road, customers are not always being better served, and employees aren't necessarily any happier. Despite millions of dollars being spent and thousands of hours being put in, for many businesses, end users are not feeling that their experience has been transformed at all. Based on the current trajectory of digitization, CX technology is going to become an increasingly important component in almost every single vertical. But with many journeys already fully digital, artificial intelligence already doing much of the heavy lifting, machines learning about how best to serve customers, and lakes of data being employed to drive decision making, are we in danger of losing the human element of experience? There's an argument that lack of diversity is part of the problem when it comes to CX, and technology failures particularly. Without diverse representation at all levels of leadership, management, and in the technical roles that impact product, service, and experience design, how are businesses supposed to best understand and serve the needs of increasingly diverse customers? Women, for example, are hugely underrepresented where it matters most, in positions of power and in technological innovation. According to McKinsey and Company, women make up only 25% of the technology workforce, only 22% in AI, and only 25% in the software development industry. Plus, when you look at the lack of female founders in the tech space and the tiny 2.3% of total venture capitalist funding received by women entrepreneurs, this suggests that women aren't the ones driving or ever even really that involved in the changes that are shaping the future of CX. With the ability for customer experience leaders to work laterally across organizations and unite decisions around people, process, and technology, there's a real opportunity to create a counterbalance by employing more inclusive design. But with only 30% of CX professionals entering management being women, bias might not only be holding back women, but the compounding effect of all of these things might also be holding technology, business, and customer experience back too. Ultimately, the question is, what can be done to turn the tide on DEI, and what exactly can individuals and organizations do to redress the balance in CX and technology in order to shape a better, more inclusive future? During this debate, we'll be discussing the state of CX from the point of view of women working in technology, highlighting the barriers that women face in the workplace, challenging how intersectional bias affects women's prospects, and through their real-life examples from battle-scarred careers, share not only practical tips and advice for women in overcoming the barriers, but also guidance for men on how they can be part of the solution too. So please allow me to introduce you to Zarina Sheikh Matthew, Business Excellence Director at the Access Group, Renee Fokam, Director of Customer Experience at Cisco, Shamim Smiley, SCIEX and Conversational AI Consultant, and Susanna Becchi, Senior Director of Global Customer Experience at SCIEX. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hi there.
Welcome to this super special CX Today Cross Women in CX panel on International Women's Day. How are you all feeling today?
Good. Happy.
Yes, this is an important day for women in CX. So I think we should just jump right on in there and start this conversation. So for everybody who is listening and watching along wherever they are, I think it would be great for them to get to know you a little better. So would you mind please sharing with our audience a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and how you found your way into technology? And I'm going to start with Shamim.
Hi there. So my name is Shamim. I'm a subject matter expert in CCaaS, which is Contact Center as a Service. I also specialize in contact center technologies and operations. And over the years, I've partnered with many organizations to deliver successful digital and customer experience transformation projects. So I started off as a first line engineer from the ground, on the front line, triaging customer issues. Customers had issues with the tech that we as the vendor was producing. I found that job quite boring, the tech side, that is, not the interaction with the customers. And one day I saw a group of blokes from second and third line engineering huddled around a computer screen. They were trying to understand and fix some customer issues with their contact center solution. I kind of like nudged in and I asked them if I could get involved because it looked really cool. I could see all these different colors and, the nuances and the complexities were just vast compared to what I was working on. And I've been in the mix of customer interaction products and tech ever since. So that's me.
Well, good job that you pushed into that conversation that day, Shamim, because the contact center industry has been much better off for it.
Thank you.
So next, Susanna, a very different area of technology. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I actually lead customer experience at SCIEX, a Danaher company that provides like different sort of technologies, laboratory analytical solutions to different researchers across the world, from pharma to forensics to academia. And I've been in CX for more than 10 years. That means that within my company, I've been kind of driving what it's called the digital transformation or the technology implementation to actually better manage CX. In terms of my education, I come from a very different background. Actually, I'm a chemist. I did my PhD in molecular biology, so quite different, but that brings me closer to my current customers, to also understand them. And I started my career as a professor, but also I'm very engaged in the company, but also, of course, in this wonderful Women in CX community in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So I'm very happy to be here with these awesome women to discuss these very important topics and share experiences together.
Oh, wonderful. Like a true woman in STEM. You've got all of the boxes, I think, there with science and technology. And yeah, representing Barcelona today.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So Zarina, what a wonderful background you've got there. Is that especially for IWD?
Especially for IWD, absolutely.
I love it.
So hi there, I'm Zarina Sheikh Matthew. I'm the Business Excellence Director at the Access Group. So my team and I lead the CX transformation programs, and we work cross-functionally to improve the customer experience, drive operational efficiencies, and very importantly, foster better collaboration. So my background is 27 years in the technology sector, so focusing on service delivery and customer experience. And I kind of stumbled into this world as I was looking for a role where I could build on my customer service skills that I'd gained in retail. And the opportunity arose to join a great telecoms company on their service desk. And 5.5 years on, I'd created a customer service centre and the company had grown threefold. So I moved on from there and I entered the world of IT security, where I spent 8.5 years in service delivery and leadership roles. And that's where the power of tech really came to the forefront for me. And my aptitude for matrix management really got honed, which in my opinion is a key skill in customer experience. And since then, I've worked with global organisations of 300,000 plus employees, as well as startups and literally everything in between. So over the last 10 years, I've been working in CX director roles. It's been really exciting to witness how technology has influenced customer perceptions, expectations, and business strategy. And it's such a dynamic environment, and it absolutely keeps me on my toes, and I love it.
Yeah, it's ever changing, isn't it? And that intersection now between customer experience, technology, marketing, we're really requiring some new thought leadership, I think, in that space. So it's wonderful to have everybody here with us today. I'm sure we're going to raise some important points. So we're going to head from the UK now over the pond to the USA to Renee.
Hi, good afternoon, and to you all. My name is Renee Fokam. I am a director for customer experience at Cisco Technology, particularly within customer success. So I lead a team of customer success executives handling state and local government. So our main goal in life is to make sure that whatever they acquire from Cisco, that they are able to adopt it find business value and help them achieve their business goals and needs, which I think is the best job in the entire world. I came into technology. I actually grew up in the industry, if you will. When I was young, out of school, out of college, I accepted a temporary position to just book contracts doing data administration. And from there, I grew up into sales support, eventually becoming a services sales rep with some microsystems. And then we were acquired by Oracle, and I did the same thing for them. I also went into customer success there, as well as account management, and then landed over here in Cisco. And so super excited to have this conversation with you lovely ladies.
Yay, yeah, amazing. And yeah, I think that kind of evolution of customer success as well as a role. There are more women kind of in technology now in customer success than ever before, aren't there, as well?
Yes,
so
exactly.
Lovely intersection with CX and technology for this conversation. So thank you. So Shamim, I'm going to go back to you to ask you a question around how the concept of customer experience has evolved in recent years, and in particular, how technologies have played a role in that evolution. But I'm also really, really interested to know what role have women played in driving that technology evolution?
Okay, big question. It has to be how customers and brands interact with each other. That's been the by far the biggest evolution. So when you think back in the day, the choices customers and businesses had was really, really limited. Usually just to voice and to email, and even, good old fashioned letters. People were still writing letters to businesses when they wanted something or complaining. And I think the proliferation of digital, so web chat, chatbots, AI, self-service, automation, hyper-personalization, show me that you know me, social media. And I really want to emphasize as well, the smartphone, it just changed everything. And what it did then was force brands to evolve, because customers expected choice in how they interacted with businesses. Their patience plummeted. So they no longer tolerated putting up, 7+ days to get a response from a business. Those businesses that were still operating Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, that just, really, really frustrated everybody. And I think then what's happened because of that, then there's an expectation of the way customers how we consume technology at home. This has meant that we're sort of projecting that out to businesses, and we demand speed, convenience, and frictionless journeys and experiences in everything that we do every single day. And then when you think about how women have played that role, the key thing is, for me anyway, is that men and women think differently. They think differently in how they approach and solve problems. Now, I think this is a really good thing. But I think what that does is we should be thinking about how gender diversity presents different skills, talents, and creativity to everything. And I think it's really evident that, it's obvious when women have been involved just as much as men. And I think, when you have gender diversity, what that does is prevent biases from creeping into products and services. So.
Interesting. And I suppose customer experience even in tech companies is critical, isn't it? Because
yes,
being able to get that feedback from customers back into the product development loop, as opposed to just developers thinking this is what people want and need. And the reality is that tech companies are really product focused, aren't they, and sales focused. Being able to bring that back to the customer, the function that we can play in that is absolutely critical. So yeah, with you. And Zarina, do you have anything to add to that, I guess, from your perspective?
Yeah, interestingly, I read in a research paper that women leaders bring social and informational diversity to this exact environment. So gender diversity within R&D generates those certain dynamics that foster novel solutions that lead to innovation. And for me, a key part of that is the emotional intelligence that women bring to the workplace, because it's such a key strength. That's not to say men don't have this, it's just that women tend to exhibit higher levels and demonstrate this in their interactions. And, to Shamim's point, women are natural problem solvers. They're highly analytical, they adopt a data-driven approach, and that enables those high-quality decisions to be made. And they do have various working styles and experience and expertise that is different to their male counterparts, and that also leads to an increase in creativity and innovation. And for me, the most important part is don't forget about the customer base in this too, because their diversity should be reflected in your diversity. So it's absolutely critical to have women involved.
Yeah, totally agree. And I love the research that talks about that difference in thinking. You know, having difference is great, isn't it? Diversity of opinion, thoughts, and ways of thinking creates better products and services for sure. But that women tend to be more collaborative in their approach to finding those answers, and actually the goals of the products and services tend to have a longer term range in terms of how that impact might pay off and benefit and have a broader impact on more than just the bottom line. So being able to bring those forces together and have those differing ways of thinking can only make things better, can't it? And ensuring representation, I think that's a really good point. Representation of the customer base that you serve. Without diversity in all its glory, we're never going to be making things that are as good for customers and employees as we could. So moving now on to the question of what's going on with, you know, all this amazing technology should be making things better, right? However, we see from a lot of the reports that are coming out from governing bodies that aren't necessarily related to the technology or the consulting part of customer experience, saying that actually customer experience is in many ways getting worse and employees are getting more unhappy with their working environments. And since the pandemic, obviously, this is all accelerated as well. So, Renee, I was just wondering, do you have a point of view on why that is? And more specifically, could lack of diversity in leadership be part of the problem too?
Absolutely. And I was just reading a paper, I think it was from Forrester, they were talking about CX trends, and they said that there's a huge gap in skills within CX in general, where they're lacking inclusive experience design and storytelling and journey mapping and data literacy. And I think that, you know, with the lack of women in these leadership roles to help maybe drive that different experience. All right, to, you know, points I've been talking already about the perspective that women bring to the table and those strengths that we carry about problem solving and about emotional intelligence. This all goes into an ultimate experience. So whenever employees can really grasp something that the company's putting out that they can be excited about, that translates to happier customers. When it's just kind of like, here's the product, go, 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 it's about the company rather than the customer, then it's not as sticky with anybody.
Yeah, no, that is totally hearing you and feeling you on that one. So Susanna, we're going to move on to you now to ask you specifically about like kind of what's the impact of this lack of diversity in the creation, design and delivery of product, services and experiences. What have you seen in terms of outcomes that have not been inclusive in terms of their design?
Yeah, I think more than the products themselves, because as I said, I'm not so much involved in these tech products. I want to focus on the employees and the customer experience, and where I've seen a lot of biases appearing, right? So biases, for example, in even performance evaluations or promotions, and even opportunities to get training and development. So a lot of women sometimes are perceived to be less ambitious because we tend to be quieter or just do the work that well and whatever, and then that gets perceived as being less capable, or they may be also excluded from development opportunities or promotions. And I've witnessed that in real life, and that's based on those biases, right? And that translates then also to customer experience. There is a lot of biases between gender, but also between cultural differences. So someone that it's maybe a customer that is a non-English accent might be treated differently and maybe kind of more condescending, or not going into so in depth to actually help them. So the other thing that I've seen, and that's kind of probably also in many of the tech companies, is really men dominated. For example, the real technical experts in my company, in the like field service engineers, that was 100% men. And as we've been saying, I mean, we need to serve customers that are very diverse, and having that diverse kind of point of view, including women also, actually it's improving at the end the customer experience and how we serve our customers. And women sometimes have had very tough times, even if they were the field experts, to get that credibility, because they were, of course, a minority, and they were not less experienced, but probably less exposed. So, and I think that's an issue internally, and it's an issue also for the customers and how you serve the customers. And I think there is a lot that needs to change. I mean, of course, awareness and education about all these biases and this lack of diversity is key. But I think, as you mentioned before, we really need to collect and analyze a lot of data and identify those potential biases, and then biases that can be in this servicing and in providing the experience to the customers, but also in products themselves. So really getting this feedback and making sure that then is taken into account. It's super important. But then also a lot of internal processes have to change, right? Having a diverse hiring approach, promotion practices, designing also a lot of tech products and services in a more diverse way, and always seeking for this continuous improvement. So we need to ensure that, of course, we are inclusive. We kind of are conscious of the biases and try to overcome them, because at the end, if we can include all this diversity in our employees or internal people, that's also better serving a diverse set of customers.
No, I hear you. And I was just thinking about the examples that I'm going to be talking about in a presentation later today on International Women's Day. But like the design of things like smartphones now, like I have to use a pop socket because actually I can't fit it in my hand. But like the voice assistants don't recognize women's voices as well as they do male voices. They've all been designed to be subservient women in terms of how they talk. Right through to things in healthcare and medicine are more well tested on men than women, so the contraindications are less safe. Basically, crash test dummies are still male bodies being tested in impacts in cars, so there's still a lot of work to do, and it's broader than just gender, I think, as well. Now we've got some like racist AIs, haven't we, appearing, and like Twitter only focusing in on white faces, for example, when it's rendering its photos. Like it's kind of emerging, isn't it, actually, through the technology and the intelligence that we're creating itself. So if we don't have greater diversity representation in the creation, I think, of products and services in the first place, and inclusive design principles, to your point, Renee, being implemented throughout any development stages, and a culture, to your point, Susanna, where we're hiring the right people, leadership represents diversity. I can only see this getting worse, to be honest. Anyone have any?
Yeah, don't you think that we're noticing as well much quicker when things are wrong? So what I mean by that is just going back to what you just said, Claire, about the obvious gender stereotyping that we see every single day, the adverts that are being pushed to us on the TV. You know, it's the woman testing the washing up liquid, or, you know, at home with the household appliances. The voice and the AI bots, they tend to be female orientated, even though now I think if you ask Google, you know, what gender you are, they'll say they'll come out with something to sort of insinuate that they're neither. But the evidence suggests that that's complete BS, because, you know, Alexa is still the most abused bot out there. You know, men and you know, the abuse is coming from men. The first thing that happens when a voice assistant doesn't, I don't know, give you the right answer is we got, you know, people, I say we, it's not we, it's going straight to, I don't know, you're a bitch,
negative,
you're this.
negative, derogatory terms for women.
Yeah. And I mean, I promise you, 8 years ago, I was working for a company. We were bringing an IVR, brand new one to market. And I was desperate to have a male voice, even before it was cool, like to be a little bit different, because I didn't want a woman's voice. And I worked with this finance organization who employed a male actor. And the voice of the IVR was called Daniel, and I was just like wanted to kiss the floor because it was just so radical, so different. You didn't have like the sexy M&S voice being all patronizing and luring you into the building. So my point is, things are changing because we notice really quickly now when things are not the way they should be, or not represented the way they should be in 2023. It's still a lot to be done, but we're getting there.
Okay, so now we're going to really focus in on what it's been like for you ladies growing up and working in male-dominated environments. I think the audience would really benefit from knowing a little bit more about what it actually feels like, what your lived experience has been, and some of the examples that you could share in terms of things like the biases you've encountered. So, Zarina, I'm going to come to you again. Would you mind sharing any stories of your experience?
Yeah, over the years, I've often looked around the meeting table and noted I'm the only female in the room, and that's definitely changed in recent years to maybe there's 30% of females, but I'm still the only person of colour, and I've seen that in every tech company that I've ever been in. Mm-hmm. But my question now is, well, why have we only still got 30% at the table? The global population is pretty much a 50-50 split, so shouldn't the top table reflect that too? In my early years, I was pretty bold and harsh in my demeanour, primarily because I had grown up in a time where women needed to be like that to be taken seriously. Going back to the comments that have been made around the room around the soft voice to lure you in, and that kind of passive kind of subservient nature. So you couldn't be like that in an organization if you wanted to be taken seriously. And even as I'm kind of saying this to you, it just sounds absolutely ridiculous and just outdated that you had to behave like that in order to be noticed and have opportunities. But it's a sign of those times, and I'm really hoping that there are changes in thinking, but as we've already said, there's still loads to do. And when I think about bias that I've seen in the workplace, I do actually think a lot of it is unconscious, which, I guess you can look at that either way. People aren't really necessarily proactively being like that, but equally, it's not a great place to be. And I'm not saying that because it's an easy get out clause, by the way, but socialization and upbringing, etc., they bring norms into our psyche that play out in our words and behavior. And having seen that firsthand, it's translated into dismissive attitudes from men towards women. I know I'm being a bit controversial now,
right?
But that's my experience, and almost ridiculing their perspectives and trivializing important messages. But worse than that, doing that and then positioning those very ideas as their own and singing from the rooftops about them. And in one particular organisation, I was overlooked for both promotion and reward, and decisions favoured white male counterparts in the business who were definitely no more experienced than me. They weren't more qualified than me, and quite frankly didn't have the same soft skills or track record of delivering outcomes. But what they were really, really good at was self-promotion, talking the talk and schmoozing the right people. And quite honestly, it was a really tough lesson to learn, because I was really on a steep trajectory in my career at that point. And you won't be surprised to hear that I left that place within a year to a bigger and brighter opportunity. And I'm going to say something controversial again, that men need to stop being dictatorial. Instructing is not required. Interrupting is rude. Men can tend to preach rather than teach, and women are much more collaborative. They are better listeners, they're more reflective, they tend to play back to others, welcome input, and really create those open communication channels. And so for me, supporting women in tech is really close to my heart. I'm a mentor and a coach through a number of different programs, and it's such a great way to give back, to share your insights and experiences and guide females on the pitfalls and opportunities in tech. And the opportunities are enormous, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. But bringing your authenticity to the table is critical. Women don't have to act like men in the workplace anymore. It's not the 1980s with power dressing and those aggressive demeanors that we had to once adopt. They're no longer required, and sometimes, actually, in my experience, they're like frowned upon sometimes, because people that isn't the expectation of women necessarily anymore. And unless that's truly your natural position and your authentic self, you don't need to be like that, in 2023. And women can be assertive, and we can have a voice, but in our own way, not in a way that maybe men have dictated or we think will resonate because we're in a male dominated environment. And it's about bringing your whole self to work, and hashtag be more you, it's definitely that. And learn to sell yourself in a positive and engaging manner, and identifying your strengths, etc., and understand how you can be on that path of continuous improvement, be reflective. And women are generally very good at that, and something that I've taken and adopted in my day-to-day life is, at the end of every week, I reflect back and ask myself, did I show up in the way that I wanted to in my interactions at my meetings? And I've taken those learnings and identified what I can do differently next time. And that's really helped, because it helps you kind of galvanize what you've done really well, and then where you kind of want to develop further. And if there were a few things that I would say to women in tech, it's learn your pitch. Make sure you are comfortable in articulating how you support others, how you support your business, how you support your customers, so that your value and your contribution is clear, and you've earned your right to be there. So optimize your presence and performance by leveraging your authenticity and feeling empowered to use your voice. And the last thing I'd say is, encourage others to do the same and to listen, and find your tribe, which, in my opinion, should include both men and women, and nurture that self-belief, because we need more role models. And if anyone's familiar with Viv Groskop, in her book How to Own the Room, she wrote that the younger generation seem to have less hang-ups about using their voice, and don't conform to those stereotypes that have plagued those of us who are older. So I'd say just go out there and do your thing.
I love that. I was just sitting there thinking, I think there are these intersections with gender, aren't there? Especially because when I was young, not going to age myself by saying how long ago it was, that experience of being talked over, or someone taking your ideas and claiming them as their own, used to happen to me all the time. In fact, I'd sit in rooms and I would say something, and the older guy next to me would say exactly the same thing, and what I would have said would have not been noticed. And then when he said it, it was like, oh wow, yeah, amazing, let's do that. So I think kind of that really resonated with me. Ladies, anyone else want to throw in some examples of your experiences? Renee, I thought you might have had one or two.
I will.
Battle
Yes.
scars.
So, yes. So I was still earlier in career, and I remember when I was in a supporting role, I knew that I wanted to become a rep. I knew I wanted to do this. And there happened to be an opportunity that I was talking to the hiring manager, who was a male, and I had said, this is what I'm thinking, here's what I'd like to do. And he said, oh, thanks for the reach out, but there's nobody in your role that can do this job. And at the time, I was really disappointed. I went, why not? I was actually supporting the account already, and again, in a support role. And so it became I took that experience and that became like my big whale. Like, no, I'm going to do it. And I did. I found a mentor. I found actually a champion and introduced me to the right people, coached me a bit. And, within a year's time, I was on the account and eventually became the only person running this multi-million-dollar account. And so it was very eye-opening that I don't know if it was my gender or age or both, but I did it, and I continued to do a really good job at it. And I love all the points that Zarina made, is that we need to make sure that we understand our voice as women, and to know that we don't need to be like everybody else in the room. We don't even need to be like other women. Be you. And I think that men, my advice for men is to be champions also, right? That they need to be proximate, listen to women, understand their strengths, especially men that are in leadership, right? Understand women's strengths, and then be able to showcase them, be able to encourage them, be able to give them a platform to be able to show what they can do, so they can continue to go on to their career. It's not rocket science. It's very simple, but so many, they don't, they just figure out, well, they'll do it on their own. And that's something that I'm thinking we need to change that mentality.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and I think that came out in both of your answers, was about this idea of mentorship. So mentorship for women is a fundamental and critical way of changing the face of leadership and technology, I believe. And there aren't enough women to mentor one another. We need men to help mentor women as well. And I think that's being kind of intentional about offering to mentorship to women is a really awesome way to, I think, get to know women better understand how they think. And I think from what I've had conversations with some of my male peers, they're a bit scared to do that because they're worried about how that might be perceived, particularly to be mentoring younger women as well. So I think we need to get away from the worry that how things are going to be perceived, and just focus on the action of trying to help more women to rise up. Shamim, you must have some battle scars.
Well, I was
sitting there all quiet.
I was just thinking back to when you and I first met. I was trying to work it out in my brain. It's over 2.5 years ago, and the conversation we had around, for me, the whole thing was, the intersectionality of women, which is a key thing, and equity is huge then, isn't it? Because we don't all have the same opportunity, whether we look the same or come from the same. We're all very nuanced and different. But for me as well, it's the labels that women get, even now today. I remember very, very often that I was called emotional, and it was that was deemed as like a really bad negative, whereas now I wear my emotional flag like as a badge of honor, because I think it's one of my strengths. Women are called aggressive when for behaving in an assertive way, and I would love us to somehow be in a world where the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same processing on what good looks like,
just the same.
Yeah, exactly. But I've been in situations where I'm usually a bit like Zarina. I'm usually the only woman. I'm the only person that's not white, and that includes males and females. Especially in my earlier career, I'm pleased to say I see that changing. And I'm seeing huge differences now in how tech companies want to operate internally as well as externally. I'm seeing actions line up with the words that are spoken. Whereas if you'd have asked me that 3 years ago, I would have said, no, that's complete and utter not true. So I am seeing changes for the good, but it's really important, I think, that us as women, and we're quite a diverse group here, that we keep forging the path ahead for those that come behind us, and make it easier so that we don't have to keep having these insane conversations every year, because they are, aren't they, really? I would love it that this just wasn't a subject, because everything is fine. I know we're like far away from that, but that's my dream anyway.
Fair enough. But there's one thing we haven't spoken about, and that's the impact of motherhood, I think, on
good point,
relationships. Like, does anyone have kids here? Yeah, 3. Okay. Me and Shamim have got our fairy children, haven't we? But what have been the kind of barriers you've experienced in terms of parenting in the workplace? Obviously, you guys have made it to senior roles, you're all directors. You overcame that. A lot of women don't. Their careers stall at motherhood. They never get back in it again. Like, what's been your experience of the challenges of motherhood and full-time work?
Honestly, it's bloody hard work. There's no two ways about it. It's about juggling and making sure that you can show up at the workplace and you're still under pressure to perform and be the best. Nobody is going to give you any kind of slack, if you like. If you haven't, you've had a sleepless night or your child is sick, and so for me, there is a lot of facade. Certainly, when my children were younger, they're well into their teens now, but when they were younger, it really was about coming to work with a facade. Nobody's got any idea what you've had to do just to turn up there in the morning, and you get through the day. You have to almost like put the motherhood aside, and then you get back home and you're doing another full-time job at home as well. So it's difficult. And you just have to kind of like compartmentalize it so that you can give your best to your role, but then you go home and you give your best to your children and your family. And that's how I got through it.
But with the expectation of, I guess, or stereotypical expectation being that the onus is more on the mother than the father to do their share of parental caring. I was going to go to Susanna actually, because I'm intrigued, because Spain have changed some laws, haven't they, for parental leave recently? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Equal parental leave, so the same time off for both mom and dad. Yeah.
Still not all men take the parental leave, because you need to kind of either one or the other takes. I mean, the mom can take a specific time, but then the father can take it. But yes, I mean, I've seen a tremendous change from what Zarina was saying. I mean, my son is now grown up now. He's 19, but he has ADHD. So it was very tough, and it needed a lot of kind of support. And so it's like not having only the motherhood job, your own job, but also I've been a teacher for many years, so I've been through school twice now with him, right? And the thing is, you want to do the best in one role, the best in another role, but you are the same person, and you always feel that you are not doing the best in any of them. So it kind of gives you also that imposter syndrome that you cannot get there. That I mean, for me, it was kind of super fundamental having the help of my mom, for example, because I was traveling a lot and at the early age of my son. But yeah, I mean, it was not like my ex-husband at that time. He was not kind of thinking that was his kind of role, right? So it had my mom to come home and kind of help him to take care of my son when I was away. And probably that's one reason why he's now my ex, right?
Yeah. Sounds like a good reason for him to be an ex.
but I think it's tough because, as Zarina said, you need to put some sort of a facade, like a different, and that doesn't allow you to be your authentic self, right? Your own person. I think that's tough, and more in this man-dominated space, right? That they kind of don't care. I mean, even if I've seen a big change now, and of course now I'm a leader. I have women reporting to me, and I've changed completely. And now it's okay to tell me that you need to go to sports, whatever, for your son, and you need to leave early, or that your daughter is sick. But at that time, you kind of hide all these things because, it was not supposed to interfere with your job and your career. I think, thanks God, I think it's changed. And a lot of women that suffer that now are leaders. And we are here, and probably to support other women.
Yeah, and that's the point around role models, wasn't it? We need to see more men and women in leadership, role modeling inclusive, equitable leadership, and ensuring that people feel safe and welcome to bring their whole selves to work, be authentic, and make some of those difficult decisions without feeling bad about them, because who wants to feel guilty about wanting to have take care of their children? And so Renee, any final thoughts from you on that?
I
can see you grinning.
So I think that I know, I'm like, because this is where I think mental health and really self-care comes really into the picture. And especially since COVID, it seemed like, you come into your like home office, you do your thing, and then you don't have any downtime. It's like you got your work stuff going, and then you don't have that transition time to start, going into wife and to mother, and it is incredibly draining. And I know when I became a leader, I just remember laying on my bed and just feeling everything just like sink. I've never been so tired in my entire life. And so I think that self-care and being able, and I'm a people pleaser. I think many women are, and we have to get over it. Like you're not going to make everybody happy. And we do the best that we can within what we can control and to do. But also too, I take these things that I have 2 boys. So I take these moments and I come and I talk to them, and they're younger, and I explain to them things that I do. They ask questions and such. My son, my oldest, thinks that like my next job is to become the CEO of Cisco, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna break the news to Chuck. I don't know, but I love that. But I'm trying to like raise men to understand and help try to break some of those biases as well. So I try to take these opportunities to teach them, to give other women, a shot as they grow up, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited about the future generation. I think the Gen Z are not conforming to the gender stereotypes, and men seem to be also changing in that generation as well. So perhaps the more equitable future society that we're dreaming of is possible. And now girls are learning to code. STEM resources are being made equally available to women. There are scholarships and programs to really support women to get into the more technical roles. We've got an abundance of incredible women in SCIEX, in CS, in all of the roles that span across technology, products and service, to really help us to support that. And we just would love to see more women stepping up into those leadership roles too, and that diversity, equity and inclusion becomes a much more obvious part of the industries that we work in. So that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid, today. I'd like to just say thank you so much for coming. It's been great to have you, and we can't wait to show more women's voices on SCIEX Today real soon. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.